Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the boardroom. This week, again, Drew Kail is my co-host, and we have another special guest, Greg Schloesser from New Orleans, wearing shoes. He
is wearing shoes.
How you doing, Greg?
Doing fine, Bob. Glad to be back with you.
And you are wearing shoes.
I am wearing shoes. It's a rarity, but we're wearing them.
Don't you just love it? Don't you love it? See, we're sitting up here in what? The snow and the cold, and you're just enjoying weather down there.
About 75 degrees down here, Bob, and that's cold for us.
Oh.
I hate you. The next case, we're here to talk about a game from Rio Grande. This one is called Torres, and just for some quick background, this won the Game of the Year award by Games Magazine just this past, December. Mm-hmm. The only thing I know about this game is I sold one like early on, and the guy had his wife with him, and they were college graduates, and they brought the game back about an hour later and said, I can't make heads or tails of this. I want to return it, which I did, and they left. So in my mind, must have been too hard to play. Imagine my surprise.
I know. I thought it was very easy to learn how to play.
Why don't you give us a quick maybe overview, Greg, and give the people an idea of what the game is like.
Certainly, Bob. Torres, to me, is just absolutely wonderful game. It's one that floored me because my first experience with the game was as a prototype, and I was not impressed. But it's one of the games where you have 5 action points to use per turn, and unfortunately, you want to do about 10 actions.
That always is.
Yeah, it poses you with those what I call agonizing decisions each turn of what are you going to do with these limited number of action points, and how best to optimize it to move your pieces around the board to score the most points. And it's also a game where you can't lay out the long range plan because your opponent is going to do something which is going to totally alter what you have to do the next turn. And I love that in the game. I just think that makes the game so much more fun.
We picked that up late in the game. We didn't even get that, the defensive part of the game. But go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. And I just love that in the game. And I know some gamers love to have that from beginning to end strategy that they can pursue just on a straight line. I kind of enjoy the games where you constantly are having to react to what your opponents are doing. And Torres is just that.
Okay, well, Drew, run us through some of the components here. We have the typical Rio Grande real heavy board.
With the board, you have the track around it, the scoring track.
Nice to keep that. You don't need pencil and paper.
Yeah.
Super.
You have these plastic castle blocks, tower blocks.
That sounds good.
They're pretty sturdy.
I think you could stand on these.
Yeah,
or
I
at
think.
least,
Yeah, I think I could fit on those.
Sure. No, but they're really quite nice.
Very nice pieces. The colors, wood pieces. I'm a big fan of wooden, sturdy.
And each of these pieces represents
one
knight.
of the knights. Yeah.
Okay, and then the king,
there's
of course.
the king sitting up there on one of the castles.
And in our game, Greg, I have to tell you, since you can't see this, it's actually a king from a chess set because Inspector number 4925 left out the king.
If he's out there.
And I'm announcing this all over the world, so whoever, number 4925, you know who you are.
There's a poster up.
I don't think it was Jay Tumbleson, though. I think we're all right.
No, but actually, I kind of like our king. He looks like a king.
Yeah, he kind of does.
So then you've got the king, you've got knights sitting on the board.
The playing board right in the middle, in the middle of this.
Oh, in the middle of the board itself, yeah. Then we have 2 kind of sets of cards, or 2 kinds of cards. Why don't we go through those real quick?
We have codex cards, which, as Greg was saying, you have action points, and they kind of tell you what you can spend for each movement. And you have action cards, which, just like in El Grande, it's kind of like bending the rules.
Okay, most action cards seem to do that these days. You buy them and then spend them to change the rules in some way.
Right.
The codex allows you to do, it tells you exactly what everything costs. And as Greg said, you have 5 points to spend and 20 points you'd like to spend. So, okay, we've got a setup here, Greg. We kind of worked this out together before the show. Mm-hmm. So why don't you run through some of the strategies and how this game generally plays?
Sure, Bob. Now, far be it, does anyone think I'm an expert? I am not. I have played the game, probably a dozen times, and it has swiftly become one of my favorites. But that just because it's one of my favorites doesn't necessarily mean I'm good at it. But one of the things with the strategies, obviously, is the main scoring mechanism of the game. It happens 3 rounds. You have scoring after 3 rounds. And your points are going to predominantly come from positioning your knights in castles. The higher the level in a castle and the larger the castle that the knights are in, the more points you're going to score. So for instance, if you've got a knight at the 4th level of a castle and that castle has a surface area of 10, your points are going to be 10 times the 4, the level he's on. So you're going to get 40 points for that knight. So the key in the game, I think, there's a couple of strong keys. One is to get as many of your knights on the board early as possible. So use those action points to get your knights on the board. And then second, position them in the larger castles that opponents are also helping to build. Mm-hmm. If you've got one knight sitting alone in a castle and no other opponent is in there, you're going to have to do all the work to expand that one castle. Whereas if you've got him in a castle that Drew, you might have one of your knights in, and Bob, you may have one of yours, mm-hmm. We're all 3 working to build that castle. So my point on that is just continuing to progressively move him higher and higher, and I'm getting the added benefit of you guys adding to the surface area. Okay. So I'm not doing all the work by myself. I'm kind of letting you guys do the work for me. So I think those are your 2 main, the things that I try to pursue when I'm playing, is get my knights on the board early and get them into castles where other people are as well so that they're helping you construct those castles.
How important are the action cards to you? I know that it costs one of your action points to buy a card.
Yes.
It seemed to me that was very important in our games.
Extremely. I was getting to mention that's the next thing I would...
I'm just trying to look smart, Greg.
No, you're doing great. You've obviously played it before, so you know. Those action cards are very important, too. So try to get at least one of those into your hand each round when you've got those 5 action points to spend, because when you do play them, there's no cost to it, and they can bend the rules in dramatic ways and oftentimes surprising ways. Even though everyone's got the same deck, and even though when we explain the game, I'll usually highlight every action card so that there are no surprises, you still forget that, hey, this guy can jump up 2 levels with this card. So the tendency is to say, well, Bob can't move up there because it's 2 levels, I'm safe, and then all of a sudden Bob plays a card where he can. What I was mentioning is the surprise element of the action cards, I think, always makes the game fun, because you certainly feel that, okay, well, that opponent cannot do a certain action, so you're pretty safe and you can now concentrate on another area, and suddenly they play a card which allows them to do that 2-level jump and usurp what you thought was going to be the highest position mm-hmm. in that castle. So the action cards are extremely important to allow you to bend those rules, so to speak, and take actions which are out of the normal realm of possibilities in the game, and I think that's real important and exciting as the game develops.
Okay. As far as moving your knights, you said you like to get them on the board quick.
Yes.
Or quickly. What you really want to do, it seems, is since there's, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 castles with 6 knights. You want each knight on a different castle.
Absolutely.
You want it on the highest level you can get it.
Yes.
And the biggest base.
Right. The only exception to that, Bob, that I usually will find is that to get the king's bonus, for instance, at the end of each scoring round, you can qualify for a king's bonus if your knight is on the appropriate level of the same castle the king is in. And so those are good bonuses. A lot of people overlook that, but over the course of the game, it's a 5, a 10, and then a 15-point bonus. So you're looking at 30-point swing there. So sometimes it is worth sacrificing a knight out of a castle if he's only going to earn, say, 6 or 7 or 8 points in that castle, to move him into the king's castle, even though you have another one there, so that you can get the king's bonus and score for that castle with the second knight that's there. So that would be the only exception to having a different knight in each castle.
And you feel that generally going for the king's bonus in the king's castle, and of course the king is moved at the end of each turn by whoever's in last place.
Great equalizer.
At least in the basic
rules. Yeah, great equalizer. I think
we noticed that too.
We noticed that most people that move the king put it in their castle. Just put them on their own castle.
Absolutely, and away from everybody else if possible.
Yeah, I know.
Make them run for it.
Far away.
But yeah, I think the getting the king's bonus, I've always done it. In every game I played, I will try to get that. Now, I know I've seen some people discuss on the net where it's not that important. I disagree. I think it's very important. I would think the first round it might be okay to admit it because it's only 5 points. But that second and third round, you're talking 10 and 15 points respectively. That's a lot of points to give up.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. You said you'd like to get your pieces out. We've mentioned that before. Get them out early on the board. If you're going to do that, aren't you going to sacrifice once in a while a turn that you can't place all the tiles allotted to you for that turn?
Yeah.
Does that bother you?
No, it really doesn't. It really doesn't, especially if you followed the first strategy that I mentioned, is getting your knights into castles that your opponents are also building. Because then you can sacrifice putting one or two castle pieces on the board because your opponents are doing it for you. So that is why I like being able to get into there, because I know even if I'm going to concentrate on maybe placing a new knight or picking an action card, more than likely one of my opponents is going to add to that castle for me anyway. So I really don't mind foregoing placing some castle pieces. I'd much rather get those knights on the board early.
Okay, I'm going to have to remember that.
Yeah.
We're going to use this against you next March.
Oh, good.
Okay, so as far as scoring, at the end of every year, and the year is broken up into different parts, but we're not going to get too specific on that. It depends how many players are playing as far as that's concerned.
Correct.
But at the end of a year, you basically decide how big each castle is based on the bottom area.
That's correct.
How many tiles it covers.
That's correct.
And then multiply it by wherever your knight is.
In that castle, whatever level he is on. So, if he's on third level and you have a 10-space castle,
you got 30 points.
Times 10, you've got 30 points. That's
okay.
Right.
Did you notice any, and in our game we kind of did, some defensive plays where you might take one of your knights and put it on a place that you want to deny an opponent from grabbing?
Absolutely, which is another one of the other reasons, not necessarily as an important reason, but another reason to have more than one knight in the castle. If you've plopped your knight up at the high level, let's say it's a 5th level, and there was a stepping stone next to it where an opponent could jump up to the 4th level, not a bad move to put one of your knights on that 4th level space and prevents him from doing it. He now has to spend probably several turns erecting a completely different section of the tower to reach that level. Now, of course, you have to balance that with the fact, with the decision is, could that knight have earned me more points in another castle? But if he can't, it's not a bad place to put him to deny an opponent those points. I
do want to tell our viewers there's a lot more tiles in the game. We have maybe 1/10 of the tiles that are in here, but we didn't want to clutter everything up. The board looks a little sparse, but it's not that way at all.
No.
By the time you get to year 2, the board is loaded with high castles, huge castles. One thing, you cannot run into another castle, so the castles, as in a game like Acquire, they do not join.
Cannot merge two castles.
They do not merge.
Cannot merge at all. You cannot move your knight diagonally, so it's kind of difficult to run from one end of the board just across spaces. I know we had talked a little earlier about the fact that knights can scurry underneath castles or through castles.
Yes.
Which is a pretty nifty move. And as Bob, you might be able to demonstrate that a little better than I can over the phone.
Sure.
But a knight can run in any of the castle doors, and if you look at the little castle pieces, they each have 4 doors, one on each side, and then run out of any door in that castle on the same level. So if you've got a string of, say, 4 castle pieces in a row, a knight can enter on one end and run all the way out the other end, and it only cost him 1.
Exactly.
So that is a neat way to maneuver a knight across the board quickly, as opposed to just the trudging one step at a time.
Well, that's what I like about this game. It's not just the tile placement, and that would be plenty. Mm-hmm. And it's not just the spending of your action points, because that would be plenty. but it's also moving your pieces.
Absolutely.
Playing defense, using your cards. It's everything.
It is
this
just
game
a
has
wonderful
it all.
game. An interesting story, if I may, when I first played the game, I actually played it at Alan Moon's Gathering late in 1999, and Jay Tummelson, who owns the Rio Grande Games, was all excited. He had just got a fax of the rules, and he actually had a fax copy of the board, and he wanted to try it. So he was running around grabbing pieces from everybody's other games. We had pieces from 3 or 4 different games to make up a game. And we played it, and the cards were in German. He didn't really remember the translation on the cards, so I was using rudimentary German at best to try to figure out what the cards could do. And it actually was a terrible experience. I did not like the game. But I took a chance. Like I said, I'm an easy target for game companies. When it was finally released, I bought it. And now it is one of my favorite games. It is solidly in my top 10 games. Just thoroughly enjoy it. But that first experience was not the best, but I'm glad I gave it a second chance.
Well, I do want to add one thing, and we're just about out of time here. The game was designed by Wolfgang Kramer.
One of my favorite designers, yes.
See, if you're gonna speak before I can say that, then that's not fair. I was gonna say, what did he do? Wildlife Adventure, probably one of my top 5 best games.
El Grande.
El Grande. This guy's is one of the big names.
Kail won German Spiel des Jahres in 1999.
Exactly, and Michael Kiesling.
Yeah, got co-credit. Mm-hmm.
Also has credit. Ravensburger USA design team, and again produced by Rio Grande. Drew, what did you think? Give me a verdict.
I thought this was the most fabulous game in the whole world because it was the only one I won. Ever.
Well, that's the old adage. You add a point or two to your ratings if you win the game.
Yeah, I know.
Well, now we understand how Drew rates them.
That's
if
right.
he wins, it is the best in the universe.
I thought so.
I like Mr. Wolfgang Kramer's games. I have nothing more to say. Greg, what do you think all told?
Oh, it's a solid 9 in my book on a 10 scale, and probably awful close to a 10. But that lofty position is held by, as you know, my favorite, El Grande.
Well,
a wonderful game, Bob. Wonderful
I mean, you'd be crazy not to have both of these in your collection, probably. I have to add one of the players that was playing it last night, real quickly. All they kept saying was the colors are beautiful, the game looks beautiful, it feels beautiful. I think that just about sums it up, and add to that some nice play value.
Excellent. Yes.
Again, I do hate to cut you off, but I want to thank you for being here with us.
Thanks again, Greg.
It was a real treat.
Had a great time, Bob.
We got to do it again with you live sometime and prove to the people that, in fact, you do own shoes.
And then move the show down here. We'll do it from the bayou. No problem.
We may be doing that. Our crew may be sent down there very shortly. But I do have to thank you once again and thank everybody for watching. Without you, it wouldn't be possible. Next week...
what are we doing next week?
I don't know. Maybe 3 Quints, the kind of clues and trivia type thing. It's not really that, but it's a question and answer type game.
It was an interesting game.
Matching up 3 groups, almost like Tri-Bond.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to try and get to that. We also want to do 25 words or less. And, real quickly, Euro Games is coming out with 5 new games. Just talked to them today. It's called the Blue Game Series. Demo Crazy. It looks like Democracy, but take the C out and put a Z. Demo Crazy. 4 to 10 player, $15 game. This sounds great. A political type game where you vote and you get groups together to vote and then they break factions off. Just interesting. A game called Castle, part puzzle, part card game. Sounds like a Kinesia game to me. Probably not, but it sounds like that.
Which I would enjoy.
So we're going to be doing all these very soon. And if you have any ideas for shows you'd like to see or any suggestions at all, please feel free to write us at the boardroom. Just click on the little button at the bottom of your screen there. Send us some email. Drew, appreciate it again.
Oh, thanks.
Again, Greg, we'll talk to you soon. And thank you for watching the boardroom again. Take care and good evening.